Through the choking smoke and the cacophony of sirens and shattering glass, a lone figure moved against the tide of fear. He walked with strange, uneven gait, yet with undeniable, impossible purpose straight toward the heart of the inferno, toward the violence. And as the flickering firelight caught him, the unbelievable detail emerged. This man, the silhouette stepping out of the swirling chaos, had only one leg. Just moments before, Sarah Daniels felt the world ending. Her small bakery, the sweet spot, her dream built with flour, sugar, and savings, was under siege. The joyous sounds of city evening had twisted into a nightmare symphony. The roar of an unseen mob, the rhythmic, sickening thump of heavy objects against her door, the high-pitched shattering of her display window. Glass sprayed inwards, sharp and terrifying. She scrambled back, pressing herself into the darkest corner behind the heavy oak counter her grandfather had lovingly built, the scent of cinnamon and yeast now mingling with the acrid stench of smoke from fires burning nearby. Masked figures, like specters born of hatred, swarmed the street outside. Their shadows danced, elongated and grotesque, in the leaping firelight from overturned cars. She saw the glint of metal, bats, pipes, heard their jeers, cold and devoid of humanity. They were coming for her shop. For her. Panic seized her, cold and absolute. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying, whispering desperate pleas into chaos. Where were the police? Where was anyone? People were running away, faces averted, swallowed by the night. No one was coming. No one dared. Hope felt like a dying ember, about to be crushed underfoot. Then through a gap in the swirling smoke, she saw him, the stranger, moving with that peculiar, determined limp, walking into hell, it seemed, just for her. His name was Jack Tanner, but folks around Oakhaven, the few who knew him beyond a simple nod, often just called him Cap, a nickname earned not in some corner office, but forged in the crucible of places most Americans only saw on the news. His mornings didn't start with spreadsheets. They started before dawn in the cool, grease-scented air of his small auto repair shop, Tanner's Tune-In Trust, tucked away on the industrial edge of town. The first ritual, even before the pot of brutally strong coffee began to brew, was attending to the leg. His left leg, below the knee, was a marvel of carbon fiber and titanium, a prosthetic that was both a testament to modern science and a constant, unyielding reminder of a roadside bomb on a dusty Afghan road years ago. He didn't complain about it, didn't talk about it much at all. Checking the straps, adjusting the socket, feeling the familiar, solid weight settle into place. It was just part of the routine, like checking tire pressure or diagnosing a rough idle. His customers, mostly working-class folks and retirees who valued his straight talk and fair prices more than fancy waiting rooms, knew him as a man of quiet competence. They saw the faded Marine Corps sticker on his toolbox, the slight stiffness in his gait, the way his eyes sometimes seemed to look past you, focusing on something distant and unseen. They didn't pry. They respected the invisible boundary around the man. His shop was a sanctuary, orderly, despite the inherent messiness of auto repair. Tools hung in their designated places. Manuals lined a sturdy shelf. A small, weathered American flag was tacked to a corkboard, sharing space with invoices, and a faded photo of Cap, much younger, arm in arm with fellow Marines, their faces tanned and grinning despite the harsh landscape behind them. He rarely glanced at the photo now. The memories it evoked were sharp, sometimes painful. The camaraderie, the loss, the weight of responsibility. He carried it all, a quiet burden masked by a layer of blue-collar pragmatism. He believed, fiercely, in the bedrock values he'd sworn to uphold. Honor, duty, integrity, looking out for your neighbor. Fix what's broken. Charge a fair price. Stand by your word. Simple principles in a world that felt increasingly complex and fractured. He'd seen enough conflict overseas to make him deeply cherish the fragile peace of a civilian life. The rising static he heard about on the news. Protests escalating in the nearby city center. Anger spilling onto the streets. Filled him with familiar unease. He'd hoped, perhaps naively, that it was just noise, political theater that would eventually fade like a bad exhaust leak. He preferred the predictable rhythm of engines, the tangible satisfaction of solving a mechanical puzzle, the quiet hum of his small town settling down for the night. Conflict, chaos, he'd paid his dues. He wanted no part of it anymore. That evening, however, the chaos found him. He'd driven into the city, a rare excursion, to pick up a painstakingly sourced vintage carburetor. Old Mrs. Henderson, whose cherry-red 67 Bel Air was her late husband's legacy, was counting on him. He'd found the part at a specialist shop deep downtown. As twilight bled into night, the atmosphere shifted. The usual city buzz was replaced by something sharp, agitated. Angry shouts echoed off the buildings. Police sirens, once distant, grew into a frantic chorus, lights flashing as cruisers sped past him, heading towards the city core. Then he saw it, a thick, greasy plume of black smoke billowing into the sky, far too large for a simple fire. A cold knot formed in Cap's stomach. Instincts, long dormant but never truly asleep, began to stir. Training kicked in, situational awareness, threat assessment. He saw sporadic groups of people running, faces tight with fear. Others moved in the opposite direction, drawn toward the disturbance, some masked, carrying makeshift weapons. This wasn't just a protest anymore. It was unraveling. He tried to turn his sturdy old pickup around, navigate away from the escalating trouble. But the streets were quickly becoming choked. Cars were abandoned haphazardly. People surged unpredictably. And then, through a gap in the throng, he saw it, like a beacon of warmth about to be extinguished. Sarah's Bakery, the sweet spot. He recognized the cheerful blue awning, the window boxes usually overflowing with bright geraniums, now tragically trampled. He'd stopped there maybe half a dozen times over the years. Good coffee, surprisingly delicate pastries for a man whose hands were usually coated in engine grime. A small moment of unexpected civility. But now, civility was gone. Masked figures were swarming its entrance, their intent horribly clear. Rocks flew. The sickening crunch of the front window shattering echoed even over the din. And in that instant he saw her face, Sarah's face, pale, terrified, framed for a heartbeat in the broken window, before disappearing back into the shadows of her shop. Others on the street either hurried past, pretending not to see, or lingered, watching the destruction unfold. Nobody moved to help. Every fiber of his being, every instinct for self-preservation screamed at him. Leave. Get out. This isn't your fight. The dull, familiar ache in his residual limb pulsed, a physical reminder of the cost of intervening. The price of battle. He was one man, older now, not as fast, and missing half a leg. What could he possibly do against a frenzied mob? It was madness, suicidal. But the image of Sarah's face, the sheer, predatory ugliness of the attack, the chilling indifference of the bystanders. It ignited something else inside him, something older than fear, deeper than the desire for peace. This wasn't Kandahar. This wasn't Fallujah. This was home. This was an innocent woman about to be consumed by savagery. This was the very thing he and men like him had sworn to stand against. A low growl vibrated in his chest, barely audible above the external chaos. No, not on my watch. It wasn't a shout. It was a vow, spoken into the thickening smoke, sealed with the quiet resolve of a man who knew the cost and chose to pay it anyway. He slammed the truck into park, yanked the handbrake hard enough to make the cable groan, and cut the engine. He swung himself out, his movements economical, practiced. His prosthetic landed solidly on the cracked pavement. He didn't run. He moved forward, deliberately, pushing against the current of fear, his uneven stride carving a path to the retreating onlookers. A solitary figure heading towards the danger, not away from it. Each step was heavy, weighted with grim purpose. He reached the bakery just as the splinter remains of the front door gave way completely under a barrage of kicks and blows. Rioters surged inside, their shouts triumphant, animalistic. Cap didn't hesitate. He planted himself squarely in the breach, his solid frame filling the doorway. "Hey!" His voice wasn't just loud. It carried the unmistakable crackle of command, a sound honed on wind-swept firing ranges and in desperate firefights. "Get out of there! Leave her alone!" The sudden, authoritative challenge startled the nearest figures. They turned, momentarily confused. One, younger, wiry, holding a length of pipe, registered Cap's age, his work clothes. Then his eyes dropped to the prosthetic leg visible below the rolled-up cuff of his jeans. A contemptuous sneer spread across his face. Well, look what we got here. Gonna dance for us, old-timer? What's a gimp like you gonna do?" Cap's gaze didn't waver. He ignored the taunt. His focus locked on the interior of the shop. He could hear muffled crying now, the sounds of wanton destruction, glass cases shattering, metal racks crashing down. Smoke was starting to curl from inside. He had to get to her. "Ma'am," he called out again, pitching his voice to Carrie, trying to project reassurance over the bedlam. "Sarah, stay down. I'm coming to get you. Just hold on." He took another step, bracing himself, becoming a human shield in the doorway. The taunting rioter lunged, swinging the pipe, but Cap deflected it with a forearm block, the impact sending a shockwave up his arm, but not moving him from his position. Others, less interested in confrontation than in destruction and looting, tried to shove past him. The small space became a frantic bottleneck. Cap didn't strike back to injure. He used his size and leverage defensively, pushing, blocking, creating precious seconds, buying time. He saw a flicker of movement behind the overturned counter. Sarah, trying to make herself smaller. He shoved hard against two bodies trying to force their way in, using their momentum against them, sending them stumbling back onto the sidewalk. In that brief instant, he lunged into the bakery. The air inside was immediately thicker, hotter. Acrid smoke burned his eyes and throat. Flames were no longer just licking at papers. They were greedily consuming wooden shelves, climbing toward the ceiling. The smell of accelerant was strong, sharp, terrifyingly deliberate. It wasn't just vandalism. It was arson. "Sarah, where are you?" he yelled, his voice already hoarse. Coughing racked his body. Visibility was decreasing rapidly. "Here!" A weak cry came from behind a heavy oak counter, now scarred and smoking at one end. He pushed through fallen debris. Bags of flour split open, shattered jars, overturned chairs. He reached the counter, peered over. She was there, huddled, face streaked with tears and soot, a trickle of blood matting the hair at her temple. Her eyes were wide with a terror, so profound it seemed to paralyze her. "Come on," he said, his voice urgent but controlled. He offered his hand. "We have to get out of here. Now, through the back." For a second, she hesitated, lost in shock. Then, seeing the determination in his smoke-stunned eyes, the sheer solid presence of him in the midst of this hell, she grabbed his hand as if it were a lifeline. He pulled her up. She stumbled, coughing violently. "Stay low. Follow me," Cap ordered, pulling her toward the rear of the shop, where he knew the back door and alley must be. He tried to shield her with his body as much as possible. The heat was ferocious. A section of the ceiling groaned ominously overhead. A burning display rack crashed down behind them, sending sparks showering around them. He pushed Sarah forward. His prosthetic leg occasionally slipped on the slick, debris-covered floor, forcing him to catch his balance. The awkwardness of frustrating hindrance, the strain sending jolts of phantom pain through his nerves. He gritted his teeth against it. No time for pain, only survival. They reached the back room, a small storage area, equally chaotic. The back door hung open, clearly forced. They burst through it, gulping at the relatively cooler, though still smoke-filled, air of the narrow alleyway behind the shop. Freedom? For a heartbeat, maybe, but the alley was no sanctuary. It was a trap. To their right, back toward the main street, more figures were visible, drawn by the smoke now billowing from both ends of the bakery. To their left, a dead end, a high, imposing chain-link fence, probably 10 feet tall, stretched across the alley, topped with vicious-looking coils of rusted barbed wire. Brick walls hemmed them in on either side, and behind them, the roar from inside the burning bakery intensified, punctuated by angry shouts. They could hear footsteps pounding on the pavement at the alley entrance from the street. They were boxed in, the fire pushing from behind, the mob closing in from front. Sarah's breath hitched in a sob. "Oh no, no, we're trapped." Her voice was thin, laced with despair. She leaned against the grimy brick wall, shaking. The heat radiating from the bakery door was becoming intense, blistering. The shouts from the approaching mob were getting closer, echoing menacingly in confined space. Cap scanned the dead end, his mind racing, assessing options with battlefield clarity. Scale the brick wall? Impossible without gear. Fight? One man, one civilian, one good leg against a mob? Suicide. Go back to the fire? Certain death. His eyes fixed on the fence. High. Intimidating. But maybe... He squinted through the gloom, his gaze tracing the top edge. There, a section, maybe 3 feet wide, where the strands of barbed wire were broken, drooping slightly. It wasn't much. A tiny flaw in an otherwise impassable barrier. It was their only hope. A desperate, slim chance. He turned to Sarah, put his hands firmly on her shoulders, forcing her gaze away from the approaching danger and onto him. His voice was low, intense, cutting through her panic. "Sarah, listen to me. Look at me." She met his eyes, wide and swimming with fear. "There's only one way out. Over the fence. It's high, but I can get you up there. You have to climb. Fast. Don't look back. Don't think. Just go. Can you do that? You have to trust me." She searched his face, the soot, the sweat, the lines etched by time and hardship, but mostly the unwavering steel in his eyes. She saw no deceit, no hesitation, only absolute resolve. She swallowed hard, the smoke burning her throat, and managed a jerky nod. Good girl. He immediately turned her towards the fence, positioning her directly below the damaged section of barbed wire. He moved behind her, planting his right foot firmly on the cracked asphalt, feeling the familiar solidity. He set his prosthetic, making sure the socket was secure, the foot angle for maximum stability. The throb in his residual limb was a raging fire now, but he walled it off, compartmentalized it. He laced his calloused fingers together, creating a makeshift platform. "Okay, your foot, right here. Now!" Driven by pure adrenaline, Sarah placed her sneaker into his clasped hands. Cap took a deep, ragged breath, filling his smoke-damaged lungs. He braced himself, channeling every ounce of strength from his core, his shoulders, his good leg. He remembered the grueling drills, lifting heavy packs, carrying wounded comrades. This was different, yet terrifyingly the same. With a guttural roar of pure exertion that seemed torn from his very soul, he straightened his leg and surged upwards, hoisting her slight weight. His muscles screamed in protest. His back felt like it might tear. The strain on his prosthetic was immense, sending white-hot signals of agony up his thigh. But he locked his arms, held his ground, his body trembling violently with the effort. "Climb," he yelled, his voice raw. "Go. Go. Now!" Sarah scrambled like a cornered animal, her hands finding purchase on the diamond-shaped wire mesh. Terror gave her unnatural speed. She reached the top, saw the jagged edges of the broken barbed wire, hesitated for only a microsecond, then propelled herself over, tumbling in a heap onto the relatively safer ground on the other side, letting out a choked cry as she landed. She was clear. Now him. The shouts from the alley entrance were terrifyingly close. He could see the flickering torchlight reflecting off angry eyes just yards away. No time to think. He released his hands, grabbed the fence wire. His powerful arms, honed by years of turning wrenches and military training, pulled. His good leg pushed off the ground. He ignored the screech of metal as his prosthetic scraped against the chain link, finding purchase where it could. Sheer will met raw power. He hauled himself upwards, grunting with the effort, the muscles in his shoulders and back bunching like knotted ropes. He reached the top, swung his good leg over, then the prosthetic, catching his ripped jacket on a bar but tearing it free. He launched himself off the top, letting gravity do the rest. He hit the ground on the other side hard, landing awkwardly, the impact jarring his entire frame, sending shock waves through his already protesting body. He gasped. The wind knocked out of him, pain flaring intensely in his hip and residual limb. But he was over. He was through. The roar of the mob was still audible, furious, but it was on the other side of the wire wall, muffled, defeated for now. Sarah scrambled towards him as he pushed himself painfully into a sitting position, then slowly, agonizingly, to his feet, leaning heavily against the cold, damp brick wall of the building that formed the side of the alley. Her face, streaked with grime and tears, was etched with a mixture of shock, relief, and dawning comprehension. You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. She reached out instinctively to steady him, her small hand on his soot-covered arm. "Oh my God, are you okay?" He tried to nod, managed a weak grimace instead. He coughed, a deep, racking cough that shook his body. He tasted blood and smoke. As he leaned there, gasping for air, the adrenaline beginning its cruel retreat, leaving behind a landscape of pain and exhaustion, her gaze traveled down his body. It stopped abruptly at his left leg. The tear in his sturdy work pants, ripped wider during the climb, revealed not flesh and bone, but the unmistakable structure of a modern prosthetic limb. Metal pylons, articulated joints, a carbon fiber socket. Her eyes would have been darting around nervously just seconds before, now fixed on the leg with stunned disbelief. The uneven gait, the incredible strength he'd shown lifting her, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Your leg," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She looked from the prosthetic back to his face, her expression a mixture of awe and deep, gut-wrenching empathy. "All this time, you lifted me, you climbed that fence with one leg?" Cap followed her gaze down, then met her eyes again. The effort to speak was immense. He managed another small nod, sweat dripping from his brow, carving paths through the grime. "Afghanistan," he rasped, the single word explaining everything and nothing. He attempted a wry, tired smile. Still gets the job done. Mostly. Just then, a new sound pierced the night. The blessed, welcome sound of sirens growing rapidly closer, converging on their location. Red and blue lights painted the alley walls, strobe-like. Heavy footsteps pounded nearby. Figures emerged from the street entrance at this end of the alley. Police officers, weapons drawn but lowering them as they saw Cap and Sarah, and firefighters in full turnout gear, carrying axes and halogen bars, their faces grim beneath their helmets. And with them paramedics, carrying bags and oxygen tanks. A young female paramedic was immediately at Sarah's side, her voice calm and professional. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Let me take a look." Another medic older, with tired eyes that had seen too much, knelt beside Cap. "All right, Marine," he said, noticing the faded tattoo almost hidden by soot. "Let's check you out. You inhaled a lot of smoke back there. Took a hard landing, too. Looks like..." Cap waved him off weakly. "Her first. Check her." But the medic was already assessing him, checking his breathing, his pulse. Sarah, despite the paramedic gently trying to examine the cut on her forehead, couldn't take her eyes off Cap. She reached out again, her hand trembling, and covered his dirty, calloused hand where it rested on his knee. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Tears flowed freely now, not just of fear or relief, but of overwhelming gratitude and awe. They were smashing everything, she choked out, the words tumbling over each other. They set the fire. I thought I was going to die in there. She squeezed his hand tighter, looking directly into his exhausted eyes. You came back. You walked into that For me, a stranger, you saved my life. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're a real hero." Cap looked back at her, the title seeming to hang uncomfortably in the air. He saw the raw emotion in her eyes, the profound relief. He thought, fleetingly, of other rescues, other fires, other moments where everything hung in the balance. He'd lost good men. He'd seen bravery that took his breath away. He'd never considered himself a hero, just a Marine, just a man trying to do the right thing. A flicker of something complex crossed his face. Weariness, pain, but maybe, just maybe, a quiet sense of purpose fulfilled. He gave her hand a gentle, reassuring squeeze. "Just glad you're safe, ma'am. That's all that matters." In the days and weeks that followed, the scars on the city began to heal, though the memories of that night lingered like the smell of smoke after a fire. Sarah's bakery was a charred shell, a testament to the senseless violence. But Sarah herself, buoyed by an outpouring of community support, was already planning to rebuild. Donations came in from strangers, local contractors offered materials and labor at cost, and benefit bake sales, held at other locations, were organized. The spirit of Oak Haven, bruised but not broken, shone through. And woven to the narrative of recovery was the story of the quiet mechanic, the one-legged veteran who had walked into the inferno. Cap Tanner, predictably, shunned the spotlight. He politely declined interview requests, waved away accolades, and immersed himself back in familiar, comforting rhythm of Tanner's tune and trust. He replaced a ripped trouser leg, meticulously cleaned and oiled his prosthetic, and got back to diagnosing faulty alternators and replacing worn brake pads. He fixed Mrs. Henderson's Bel Air, and she paid him, as always, with a plate of still-warm chocolate chip cookies and a grateful hug. Yet, things weren't entirely the same. The weight Cap carried seemed infinitesimally lighter. The ghosts of past battles seemed a little quieter. He had faced the chaos again, not under orders on foreign soil, but by choice on the streets of his own nation. He hadn't buckled. He hadn't hesitated when someone was in peril. He had stood tall, even on one leg, against the darkness. There was a quiet satisfaction in that, deeper than any medal or citation. Sometimes, customers would leave an extra 20 on the counter, or a six-pack of his preferred local beer would anonymously appear by the shop door at closing time. He'd just find them, nod slowly to himself, maybe allow a brief, almost imperceptible smile, and lock up for the night. The tale of Cap Tanner became more than just a local news story. It became a quiet legend in Oak Haven, a reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms or announce their arrival. Sometimes, they wear greasy overalls and carry the visible and invisible scars of service. Sometimes, they are the ordinary Americans living quiet lives, until the moment comes when extraordinary courage is required. Jack Tanner's actions that night were a powerful testament to the enduring strength of the American spirit, a spirit defined not by loud pronouncements, but by quiet resilience, selfless sacrifice, and the unwavering bravery to step forward, even when afraid, even when wounded, to do what is right, simply because it needs to be done. He was just a mechanic, a veteran, a man with one leg. And on a night filled with flames and chaos, he was everything a hero should be.